have, oh, there we Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind.
Breaking up.
We are going to be going first beginning part of it. I'm sorry, I can't remember the title of it. I know Catherine told me earlier, and I totally have forgotten it. So, but right now I'm here with my friends Jason, Catherine, Kenneth, and Lori. And so, with that, I'll meet out, and as always, you do such a great job of reading. If you wouldn't mind introducing the next section and getting us going. Thanks.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Jason from Tampa.
Morning, Jason.
Morning.
Good morning. That's Lori in Denver.
Morning, Lori.
Mm-mm.
Good morning, it's Kenji and Gorham, Maine.
Morning, it's Catherine Clement, and we're starting at chapter 3, the stages of a sacred contract.
Cool.
All growth occurs in stages, and spiritual development is no exception. But sometimes we are not even aware that we have passed from one stage to the next until sometime afterward. One of the leading mystics in the West today, Ram Dass, was born into a wealthy family and was already pursuing a successful career as a Harvard professor and research psychologist when his life suddenly changed. While at Harvard in the early 1960s, Richard Alpert, as Ram Dass was known then, became interested in human consciousness and together with Timothy Leary conducted intensive research with LSD, psilocybin, and other psychedelic drugs in a circle that included Aldous Huxley and Allen Ginsberg.
Wow.
The psychedelic experiences completely upended Alpert's rationalistic world and introduced him to the realms of consciousness outside anything he had learned about in his studies and research in psychology. After Alpert and Leary were dismissed from Harvard because of the controversial nature of their work, Alpert continued his research with a private foundation for 4 more years. Although the mind-expanding drugs had transformed him, he was also concerned about the transient nature of his highs. No matter how marvelous they were, he always came down. Like Leary and Ginsberg, Alpert, in 1967, decided to travel to India in search of new experiences. A fellow American seeker whom he met there introduced Alpert to a spiritual master named Neem Karoli Baba. The holy man instructed him in yoga and meditation, and it seems like I've read this before. Did we?
Yeah, we did.
Week?
We did, yes.
Okay, let me find.
I mean,
Yes,
it's okay. It's okay.
yeah, we did this last week.
Well, I don't know how far we got because I don't have another bookmark.
Just keep going. We're okay.
We stopped pretty quick.
I
need the refresher.
I think if I remember, we just. Okay.
Lori says she wants a refresher.
Cool.
All right.
That.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was
Go
going to
ahead,
say,
Catherine.
okay, everybody seems to want to refresh you, so let's go for it. It never hurts to go over something again. We might think.
All right. A fellow American seeker whom he met there introduced Alpert to a spiritual master named Neem Karoli Baba. The holy man instructed him in yoga and meditation and gave him the spiritual name Baba Ram Dass, or servant of God. Alpert had finally found a high that he didn't have to come down from. Returning to the United States as Baba Ram Dass, he lectured widely, wrote several influential books about the spiritual path, including Be Here Now, and developed the Prison Ashram Project, designed to help inmates grow spiritually, and later the Living Dying Project, which helped the terminally ill to experience mindfulness, insight, and peace as they died. There are 3 stages to the journey I have been on, Ram Dass wrote after returning from India. The first, the social science stage, the second, the psychedelic stage, and the third, the yogi stage. They each contributed to the next, he said, like the unfolding of a lotus flower. Yet looking back, he realized that many of the experiences that made little sense to me at the time they occurred were prerequisites for what was to come later. But the stages of Ram Dass's journey were not finished. Now in his 60s, after he finished writing a new book about conscious aging, his publisher returned the manuscript, feeling it lacked conviction. While he was trying to figure out how to improve it, Ram Dass had a stroke that left him paralyzed yet fully conscious. For the first time in his life, this eloquent teacher and mystic, who had sometimes been accused of arrogance, found himself totally dependent on his survival on the help of close friends and medical personnel. After years of struggling to heal, Ram Dass did continue teaching, and having experienced some of the challenges of aging, he was able to bring profound insights to his book on aging entitled Still Here, which was published to great appreciation. The stages of Ram Dass's spiritual unfoldment could hardly have been clear to him at the time they were happening. Before he suffered his stroke, he probably had little sense that further growth and life challenges were necessary for him. Each stage made perfect sense, the lotus flower unfolding, but only in retrospect. Many other mystics, including Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, also went through multiple stages of awakening or enlightenment. Saint Teresa likened their progression to walking through the rooms of a mansion, and Saint John to ascending a mountain. Based on the experiences of these and other mystics from different spiritual traditions, the scholar Evelyn Underhill, in her classic book Mysticism, distilled the enlightenment process into 5 stages. She called them the stages of awakening, purification, illumination, the dark night of the soul, and divine union. In the unfolding of the sacred contracts of the great spiritual masters, we can see a similar progression. These mystical stages represent an archetypal model of progression to, quote, soul clarity. That is, the capacity to recognize that the material contents and relationships of our physical world are here only as props or part of our service to our contract. The stages by which the spiritual masters became aware of the nature of their contracts are the same as the 5 stages through which we must go. Indeed, the same resistance to what we might label the divine call, that the prophets felt is evident in our own resistance to the inner voice of intuition. The difference is mainly one of degree. You may want to pause and reflect for a time here on any promptings or coincidences or intuitions you've had over the years. Write them in your journal or notebook. Note whether they came to you in a dream, through a comment, a warning, or compliment from a loved one or a stranger, through the lyrics of a song or a feeling you got from music or nature, or through something you experienced or learned through work or a pastime. How did you react to these inklings at first? Did you welcome or ignore them or even suppress them? Did you act on them? What happened afterward? The way you receive intuition or callings or guidance will help you determine the kinds of archetypal forces that are at work in your life and will ultimately help you discern your sacred contract. Abraham's awakening to the nature of his sacred contract follows the 5 stages outlined below. As with anything we learn, the stages generally overlap and continue to unfold throughout our life as we grow or develop a skill or insight. The stages are not a strictly linear progression, but rather a continuous process of growth and unfoldment that you may go through a number of times in your life as you encounter new challenges or circumstances. Number 1, contact. A moment of connection occurs between you and the divine. According to the biblical account in Genesis, 7 direct encounters occurred between Yahweh and Abraham. In the first encounter, we're told that the Lord spoke to Abram, but in subsequent directives, the Lord, quote, appeared several times to him, and, quote, the word of the Lord came upon Abram in a vision. Jesus, while being baptized by John in the River Jordan, experienced enlightenment as heaven was opened and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. Matthew 3:16. For the Prophet Muhammad, the connection came while he was meditating in a cave not far from Mecca, and the angel Jibril, the Arabic name for Gabriel, delivered his first revelation from Allah. The Buddha did not believe in a supreme being, although he did accept the presence of many lesser gods from the Hindu pantheon. Yet during his enlightenment, as he sat in prolonged meditation under the Bodhi tree, he connected with a level of universal knowledge and wisdom that rendered him omniscient. We will all be introduced to the divine through ordinary and extraordinary experiences, even if spiritual messengers are not involved. For instance, the divine influence is evident when a cluster of disasters occurs in a remarkably short period of time and reroutes your life. Disaster means from the stars, indicating a long-held belief that bad things happen for reasons known by the heavens, or an unforeseen opportunity might present itself. The divine might also be revealed through dreams, extraordinary coincidences, a transcendent experience of the natural world, or during prayer or meditation. The hallmark of a divine experience, regardless of what form it takes, is that it gets your attention and leads you to think something out of the ordinary might be happening to you. Divine encounters will be ongoing as opposed to one-time phenomena. That does not mean that disasters will be continuous, but it does mean that once you make a conscious connection with divine energy, that presence is forever within your awareness and life. Your encounters may not be as dramatic or clear-cut as Abraham's, but their outcome is generally irreversible. Take a few minutes to examine your life for turning points that represent some departure from the tribal values in which you were raised. Perhaps you encountered an inspirational figure or mentor, either in person or through reading or the arts. Ask yourself how that individual, book, or aesthetic experience entered your life and draw a line from that point to where you are today. Then add other points along the line where other individuals or experiences help to reinforce the initial message. For Ram Dass, the moment of contact occurred on his first trip to India, when he was still known as Richard Alpert. One night during his travels, Ram Dass related in Be Here Now, he had a vision of his mother, who had died the year before of a spleen ailment in which she urged him not to turn back on his search for inner liberation. Not long after that vision, he was standing out under the stars thinking about his mother and felt her presence guiding him. The next day, he was taken to meet the man who would become his guru, whom he then called simply Maharaji. The first thing Maharaji asked was whether Alpert would give him the expensive Land Rover that he had driven there and that belonged to a friend of Alpert's, a request he quickly declined. Sometime later, Maharaji took Alpert aside and said to him, "You were out under the stars last night. You were thinking about your mother." Maharaji somehow knew that Alpert's mother had died the previous year. She got very big in the stomach before she died, the guru said. Spleen. She died of spleen. The first thing that happened, Alpert later wrote of that moment, was that my mind raced faster and faster to try to get leverage, to get a hold on what he had just done. I went through every super CIA paranoia I've ever had. Who is he? Who does he represent? Where's the button he pushes where the file appears? And why have they brought me here? None of it would gel. It was just too impossible that this could have happened this way. The guy I was with didn't know all that stuff, and I was a tourist in a car, and the whole thing was just too far out. He tried to relate the experience to those he had had with psychedelic drugs, but it didn't fit that pattern, and instead his mind continued to speed up. I felt like what happens when a computer is fed an insoluble problem. The bell rings and the red light goes on and the machine stops, and my mind just gave up. It burned out its circuitry, its zeal to have an explanation. I needed something to get closure at the rational level, and there wasn't anything. There just wasn't a place I could hide in my head about this. And at the same moment, I felt this extremely violent pain in my chest and a tremendous wrenching feeling, and I started to cry. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I wasn't happy and I wasn't sad. It was not that kind of crying. The only thing I could say was that it felt like I was home, like the journey was over, like I had finished. At that point, Alpert was willing to offer Maharaji the Land Rover or anything else he wanted, although the guru simply took him on as his disciple for no fee. Through the medium of an Indian holy man, this American academic had made contact with divine power, and his life was irrevocably changed in a way that LSD and psilocybin would never have accomplished.
Wow, great reading. You guys want to?
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, I think that's a good spot because I think there's a lot to dig into, and a lot of things were going through my head, and I had one thought. Now I forgot what that one thought was, but I'll throw this out to everybody. Have you experienced anything kind of like what he was talking about, where you just kind of feel like everything you've been going through, kind of? I mean, I think we all believe that where we're at through our life, the decisions and the choices we made have led us to where we are here. But have you felt like somehow you were being guided, or it was just kind of, well, at this point I did this and then this to here and this, and kind of it's just been a mismatch? Or do you feel like there's something more deeper to everything to getting you to where you're at? I'll throw that out. Maybe kind of along the lines, kind of maybe for like what he experienced. Doesn't necessarily have to
If
mean it's
there is a
exactly the same
divine
as how he
plan,
went through.
if there is a
Go ahead.
divine plan like that, or since there is, if or since there is a divine plan like that, I'm unaware of the next steps. It's just trying to make the best decision out of whatever happens, whatever comes your way. I don't feel like I'm driving this vehicle that I'm riding around in. I'm just along for the ride, trying to make the best of what I can, whatever comes across.
Well, that's interesting. You just said that you don't know the next step, but then you feel like someone else is driving.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The divine plan, whatever is guiding us all.
So in a way, you are being guided.
I definitely believe we all are.
But maybe
Yeah.
more the question should be, do you feel like you have any say or maybe not say, but any I believe it's a little bit
Guidance.
of a say. Well, I believe that, the choices and the decisions I make are based on what I believe that God is showing me or giving me, but yet I still have the choice to make decisions to keep going that way or go a
Right.
different direction or something. But based on that, do you believe that you'll ultimately end up where you think divine inspiration is taking you, or do you think that or that you're just kind of like a boat that's being out there in the water that's being pushed whichever way the wind blows or the waves go, and you have no paddles or oars to really give you any direction?
Of course, I have my choices and the consequences that go with the choices I make. That's the rudder based on that belief. In other words,
So,
going through life, I could become a very bitter, depressed, sad person, but I choose otherwise as much as I can. Sometimes it just overtakes you and you react instead of respond because of
okay,
emotions and
I get
ego.
that. Right.
Emotions and ego really play a big part in it.
Mm-hmm. But deep down, you really don't feel like you have any real overall
Control?
any, yeah, overall say of where you ultimately get. Is that kind of like what you are getting at?
No, I'm just saying that all the plans of mice and men, I guess you could say, that stuff is going to happen because there are so many other factors and other um, individuals and everybody's choices. They affect everybody. And so I can choose to live in the doldrum or the um, circumstances, and I try to always say something good or positive to people I encounter rather than dwell on all that could be.
Okay. Because going back to what he was saying that he what started him more on the journey of looking for that constant high. So it all, and to me it goes back. It almost sounds like he was addicted to that high feeling, so he wanted to be able to have that at all times. And but yet there was nothing that could give that to him until he moved into this realm of where he was at. So is that something that do you think that mankind in general is trying to get to that point, or do you think that most people don't even really have any real idea or inkling of any of this? I mean, I do believe that God is there, that He's real, and that He
Of
leads me and
course,
guides me, but He also allows. Okay,
because we have free will and we all make the choices we choose. And
but do you think people out there?
I can't speak for all those people out there. I can only speak for myself.
I'm going more on just a general supposition that I believe that a lot of people out there in the world don't really have a real sense or real belief, or they're just. I'm going to say more like this. I think they're really more reacting to whatever goes on in their lives, and just kind of don't realize that there's more out there, and that there's, for me, God, but infinite intelligence, or that type of out there. And I don't think enough people feel that or understand that. And I think maybe, but I think people want that. I don't know.
It's the
mean,
greater consciousness. I think there's more awareness of it, and people realizing that they can make a different choice.
I have a sense that we are all guided a little bit here and there, and it depends on our perception, our perspective of things. And that I think most of the time we're not tuned in to the guidance. And a lot of times it's so subtle, or it's like right there in front of us. And I get the sense that majority of the time, if we were told, if we were like, if we had a a loud voice that just said, hey, do this, we would probably, it would probably just trigger our fight or flight response, and we would not we would not
Yeah, I
take the
agree.
guidance anyway.
Like, what was that?
Uh-huh.
Or you would argue like I do.
well,
Who
that
has those arguments, Catherine?
goes back one question. He said, "Do we ever really?" It goes back to that question he asked there in the reading. Do we ever really pick up on either the dreams or the subtle words from somebody else, or or whatever's going on around us? Do we ever really take heed and notice of those dreams, or do we just kind of play it off as just part of the everyday thing? Because I mean, I have a couple dreams and a couple things, and there have been times where somebody said something or something like that, and later on I went back, kind of rethought about it, and I thought, oh, okay, and and then I realized that, oh, well, maybe I should have changed my approach at that point in time or something, but I've already made the decisions and the things I've made, so now I'm having to deal with the decisions I've already made and dealt with. And so, do you think people realize some of those instances where an instance or a dream or somebody saying something, or bad things happening or good things happening, and do you think people really pick up on those type of things?
I'll say, yeah, I say we do, but we don't know what to do with them. And we, like, say you have an instance like you're talking about, where you had a dream, it gives you some sort of a deja vu in regards to a conversation you just had with someone, but it happened like the other day, and you didn't remember it then, and now time has passed. What do you do? And perhaps we need to get better at that, and what our options are at that time. Like, and it just occurred to me, like, well, why not uh give that person a call, and instead of saying, hey, I had this dream and all this other stuff, you just start up that conversation again, and just ask them real, politely, could you re-explain that to me again? I wasn't quite sure if I got this correct. And then maybe, you know so you know maybe that's the guidance, knowing what to do when, what are our options, how do we analyze that situation, or that, um what is it, that clue that we've been given, so that we can actually make use of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, being more aware of when that's happening. So in those moments, we can then proactively react to it more in that moment, and maybe make better decisions in that moment that will help guide us to a better place, rather than going back and after the fact, but already having made decisions, and because of those decisions you made, can you even now correct the course? And that sometimes I think is part of I think that's part of why people after a while don't actively look for those moments. I'll be honest, I don't always actively look for those moments because maybe I've realized in past instances, I've like, well, I waited too long so does it really make a difference? But I think it could, and maybe being more actively aware. But I think sometimes we just get so caught up in everything going on around us, we forget to stop sometimes and take that extra
You're right.
minute in
Yeah, it
those
makes sense.
circumstances to to look at it for what it is and really ponder the decisions that we want to make. But I know I don't do that enough.
And I know that, excuse me, I tend to come up with the best answer 2 or 3 days later.
Aha. But who's to say that that's not the exact right timing? That, when we do come up with that thought, that answer, that we just go with it rather than saying, oh, well, we're probably too late now. Right? I mean,
Right.
it's always this second guessing and this, oh, well, I can't do this because everybody else is going to mess it up for me, or life's going to get in the way, or all these other things, or it's too late now, or, well, maybe it's already been thought out that you would take this long to recognize it, and then right now is the perfect opportunity. So just a
Right.
thought.
Well,
If
that's
we really
go ahead,
have
Lori.
we really have these sacred contracts, when they were decided before we were able to make that type of decisions and choices and what we're going to react to respond. What was it I was thinking the other day, that things that happened before you were of an age to be able to make the choices. So if we have this contract that we are to fulfill, that was already decided before we were even born, based on other books we've read, whatever. um, there has to be a divine force guiding it all, I think. I'm probably not making any sense.
I think
No,
that's
you
maybe part of
do,
the
but
contract. They're like, hey, for the first part of your life, you're not going to be making decisions, so we won't start sending you any guidance until you're in your in your late teens, okay?
Or late 60s.
Or late.
actually, I'm going to kind of slightly disagree because even when we're younger and maybe not toddlers or babies or so, but when we get more, school age and into those years, and I think we do make decisions, and we're allowed to make those decisions in those moments. May not be the big decisions, but they're the stepping stones. And I think they're also part of the stepping stones of how we form, how we look at things and make decisions. So that way, as we get older, it's the blueprint in a way for how we step through the rest of our lives. So I think that, you know, while maybe major decisions, you know, that kids have to follow, you know, a lot of what their parents say and this and do and things like that. But I think there are decisions that we make, but that are the groundwork and for later on. And I I don't know why, but I have this weird feeling that if those sacred contracts are made before we come here, in my heart, I believe that there's portions of that build into that and understand that, and I think give room to that. I may be wrong. I don't know. But that's my thought, my supposition. We have free will and we have that free choice, and even a kid has a free will to either, in a lot of cases, obey mom and dad, or as a young child, throw that temper tantrum, or get mad, or break something, or act out and whatever. So I still think that plays. I think there's slightly that's built into that, knowing and understanding that on the other side, it knows that will go through that and have to go through that. So that's my take on that part of it.
You feel pretty strongly about that?
Did you get that impression, Jason? I did.
Yeah, I do.
And so the main point is that we are, that's already sort of baked in.
I do believe that, but I honestly don't know. It's one of those things that, again, I believe that God, infinite intelligence, the universe gives us that choice to, you know, like I said, make certain decisions. And even though as a kid you don't fully understand or have that full, you know, and like I said, that's why I said I think, from it's not so much for with like babies or toddlers or 4 and 5 year olds, but I think once you get more into school age, 6, 7, 8, maybe even not 6 or 7, but as you get more a little bit older, I think, you know, because there are kids that do things at, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, that they chose to make those, you know, based on whatever was going on in their lives. So I do
Right.
kind
But
of feel that way.
with the book, I don't think I want to try to have the influence of psychedelic mushrooms or LSD or whatever. I don't think I want that.
Well, no,
As
I'm
part of
not
my
talking like that. I'm not talking like doing that. I'm talking about the conscious choices, that are made, and where
Yeah,
in
sure.
the moment,
But we're not
that,
told what we can do and
and
how
I
we
think,
can. I mean, at a young age, a lot of us don't know that there are options, right? I mean, we're at a young age, we're guided by emotion and our chemistry in our body and our feelings of well, we want this or we don't want that. And we talked a while back about how I guess I'm not sure where it was, but they were teaching kids how to use breathing techniques to calm themselves down and have more of a uh, a better control over themselves. And that was a big thing. I mean, most of us, I think, thought that was a great idea, that it gave kids the something else, to another way of handling things other than just acting out. And I just was bringing that up as an example, that I agree with what you're saying a lot, but I also just wanted to bring up that point, that we just, a lot of us weren't afforded the different options of being able to handle things, or to even know that it was a normal thing to be going through certain emotions, and that, hey, this is how you deal with it. you know, let's talk about it. It's okay to talk about it, even. I mean, a lot of people
Right.
so
It
quiet about
always makes me think about who decides what is quote unquote normal. Because what one person thinks is normal, the other one doesn't.
Well, you do. You decide what's normal to you. It's your own perspective as to what's normal, but what you find normal, I may not find normal. Um, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think everyone's perspective and our understanding of what is normal, or even like socially acceptable, is can be different. And nowadays, with the whole world being opened up with the internet, we come in contact with different types of societies, where you start to realize, wow, that's you know you know they don't believe in this, or they don't believe in that, or they wouldn't allow something here that they allow over there. It's, you start to realize
Because of
that the world's a bigger place.
because of whatever is deemed as normal in that setting or circumstance or population.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But even when if you're a kid in another area of the world, you have a different perception of what is normal to you. And it's a constantly growing thing. You're constantly learning what is acceptable. And
We hope.
a regular kid is probably pushing the limits, and crossing the line sometimes by accident or for on purpose.
Well, you have to push the limits to determine your self identity, and that's part of the process.
Yep.
Well, and I think it also helps identify how far you will go for
Your boundaries.
maybe what you believe, or what you, because
You're
I
breaking up
think
a
when we
little.
get down to, oh, sorry, that's probably, I keep getting things saying I've got low bandwidth and this and that, and that's only because of where I'm at, I think. But I think that also, because I like, I'm like, I go back to being like, I'm a semi control freak. I like knowing where and how far and what, but sometimes I like to push that edge just to see how far and where I really get to the point of where I really get uncomfortable. And then for me, I know that, okay, I'm willing to go this far, you know, and to even maybe to go for what I want, or what I think is right, or or what I'm willing to deal with or put up with, or things like that. And so I think that goes back to maybe part of what, when Catherine was reading, about what he was, that high he was wanting to continually experience, that the psychedelics and stuff weren't able to keep him there, because he always came down or crashed. And so, I think in our own way, shape, or form, I think we all have that level that we're pushing, that elevated feeling, because when your vibrations are higher, you're usually either feeling better, you're feeling, so rather than when your stuff is low, it's part of it too.
Well, I found it really interesting where they were talking about the stages, and it seemed like at one point in the book they were going to speak a little bit about how we could not maybe recognize how we pass on to the next stage, and that it occurred to me that sometimes we can think we've passed on to the next stage and then realize, oh, this is the lotus flower hasn't opened up quite as much as we thought, and we're going to take a few steps back, or relearn or remember what the lesson we just learned.
Yeah. Hard-headed.
And if we're okay with that, we don't get frustrated over that. Because I think the frustration, I think I go back to like our pre-conversation we had about alignment with joy being a through idea with so many things, is that if we, and it seemed to me like the character in the book, or the person they were speaking about in the book, the Ramadas, or Dom Ross, or whatever his name was, in seeking the experience through psychedelics, he was actually looking for that feeling that put him into alignment, that put him into that frequency where he and in a sense it sort of stuck out to me that the worldly things, the like the ego you were talking about, Lori, and the different situations that we go through, and even just the frustration of realizing that we might have to go back and relearn a lesson that we thought we had figured out.
Take another trip around Mount Sinai.
Oh, I got to do that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that can cause us some frustration that can bring us out of the alignment right then and there, and that itself can be the issue and the lesson to learn, really.
I had a thought that just occurred to me, and when you were talking about the lotus flower, which I know the real lotus flower, I know that it can get damaged or break, but do you think that in your steps and processes, do you think that the lotus flower idea that they're talking about in the book, can that get broken, or can that, and you have to kind of rebuild it or restart it, or do you have to kind of, I think going back to a little bit what you kind of step back and let it bloom, so to speak, or blossom, and maybe even relearn some things?
Seems reasonable.
And you have to know about the lotus flower. It really thrives in the swamp and mucky muck. That's where they grow.
Yeah. So what about that, Lori?
Well, you're going to step in it again.
Oh, is that what that means?
Well, that's the way I see it. And that's the nourishment that is just really realizing the entire life cycle. We are constantly looking for more food to survive, but the more food what we're calling food is sometimes pretty mucky.
Right.
I actually was looking up about the lotus flower, and it says lotus plants are adapted to grow in the floodplains of slow-moving rivers and deltas. And then it says strands of while some sprout immediately and most are eaten by wildlife, the remaining seeds can remain dormant for an extensive period of time as the pond silts in and dries out. And then during flood condition, dormant seeds rehydrate and begin a new lotus colony. So to me, going back to that picture, I also think that sometimes in our growth and like you said, going from those different stages, and because sometimes I think we are dormant or just where we're at, and sometimes we don't realize that we're in that next stage or in that rehydrating stage or that growth stage again. And I think sometimes we miss it, so to speak, and we don't even realize until something really
But all
substantial
these
happens, and then we realize that, oh, yeah,
all these
and
stages are
so
there, and you're going to have to go through them again um, in order to continue
right.
the life cycle.
But it's
Sometimes you're
interesting
blooming.
how, yeah, it's interesting how just life kind of has those ups and downs and those dormant stages where you feel like it's like, okay, why isn't it, anything happening, or why am I stuck here or stuff like that? And that's, I think, also just a part of the process and going through.
Well, it just occurred to me that when we're going through those questions in our mind about why did this happen or what did this, um, is this right or is this wrong? During all that time, we are not in a joyful alignment with what we want. And so, sure, it may help to ponder those things to get a better understanding, but it's doesn't seem like it helps us move forward in the manner in which we would like to be driven by joy and happiness and our the success of our next actions.
Hmm.
And they say guard your thoughts. It's that idea is throughout so many different philosophies. And the question is, well, what are we guarding our thoughts from? And maybe it's everything that keeps us out of alignment or pulls us out of alignment.
I think that's a good thought, because I know for me, for my beliefs, the Bible says take captive all your thoughts and hold on to that. I think Catherine had to go because it's almost 8, and I know she does stuff
Thanks,
for something
Catherine.
else on Saturdays. And, and we'll uh,
That's a great point.
wrap
She
up here
says
in a
that you
minute.
create reality with your
'Cause I've
thoughts.
got Yeah, and that's, and when we're take those thoughts captive, it means we're being more aware of what we're thinking and going and intentionally paying attention to them, and that way we can then be more
Did you freeze up?
actively. I'm going to say, and it's not. We will be more actively. No, we will be more actively involved with the process and more in tune with whatever's going on around us, rather than just reacting to it.
I agree. Everything,
If
there is
you
nothing that was made that was not a thought first.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to think it or create it.
right. So
Yeah.
therefore, right. So I think that's a good, a real important thing to remember, is that we, in taking those thoughts captive, we're becoming more aware of what we're thinking and going from there.
Yeah. And so kind of to connect it all, I'd just like to say, like, our thoughts, what we're thinking, and the guidance that we're receiving. If we're aware of that and what our thoughts and how we're thinking is affecting our perspective on the guidance we're receiving, that can give us kind of a better better ability to act in the right way, or take the guidance correctly. Um, and the other last thing I think I'd like to say is it reminded me of just the basic understanding of what kind of drives us. Go back to the basic idea of most of us either are um, influenced or driven by something that's good, a notion that's good, an idea that's good about things, or the fear of loss, or the fear of something that might happen if we don't take the actions. And so it's the carrot versus the stick type of thing. And a lot of us have been, when we grew up, we were taught one way or the other, pretty much. I think a lot of us were taught the stick method, and told and said, hey, if you don't do this, you're gonna get a spanking, or you're gonna get, you're um and the fear, we were driven by fear as children, rather than the parents taking the time to try to figure out, well, what motivates us on the joy spectrum, of the goodness spectrum. Well, hey, don't you want to go do this because all your friends are going to be out there and you'll have a good time? And I mean, hey, if you do this, at the end of the day, you're going to get this treat or whatever it is. I mean, don't you look forward to that? Because and teaching us at a young age to really appreciate um, appreciate the hassles that we're going to have to go through in order to get the things that we don't see right up front, right up, that's right close, but it's, down the ways a little bit, but get us to kind of think through things rather than just
You're
be
throwing the peer pressure card in there, huh?
instead of not peer pressure, but your own personal like joy out of the situation. Get up and get dressed now because you're going to be late, and if you're late, then you're going to miss out on these things that you love. You want to, or you're going to get more of what you love, not even the missing out of it, because that's again fear driven, right? So you'll get more of what you love if you go, you'll be even better prepared. You'll get to do more things if you do this, rather than you're going to miss out if you don't, but and so a lot of times we grow up that way, and it's hard for us to stay in that into that being driven by joy and happiness, because we're sort of programmed to look for the things we have to watch out for, and the fear. That's kind of how I perceive it anyway. This has been
I
great.
think it's a pretty good perception.
Thank you.
I'll throw this one last thought out with that before I wrap things up. I think actually in a roundabout way, I think parents misuse both. I think the joy and happiness, or in another term, reward, and I think they misapply it in both ways negatively, because they'll say, well, if you do this, or if you act this way, we'll give you this. But if you act this way, we'll give you this. Rather than, like you said, kind of learning how, because every child's different, even within, between brothers, sisters, brothers and brothers, sisters and sisters, every child is different. And understanding how each one reacts and responds to things, and then building up, like you said, more that hierarchy of the joy or that side of it, and building that in to helping them learn to make those choices towards that, because a parent might think, well, if you do this, we'll give you this, thinking they're giving them something good, but that may not be the thing. And I think that goes back to what this guy Ram Mandazi, or whatever his name was.
Ram does.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I
Ram
just can't. Yeah, I've heard of him, but I can't remember his name right off the hand. I think that was more in line what he was looking for, and then when he found this guru, that's where he found that level to have that, which is that higher energy, which we all like and we all want to be at, maintain. But I think sometimes life throws in things that bring us down out of it. So, and then we get kind of caught up in that. But learning how to, and going back to taking our thoughts captive, and learning how to recalibrate ourselves to get back to that level, I think that's part of what we need to learn and understand.
Part of what?
Part of what we need to learn and understand to help us get to that, for lack of a better word, Zen sort of spot, or that high, as he calls it, but that high level of energy and that sense of, happiness or joy, more joy, where is that more deep-seated feeling.
Could be. Could be.
Love you all. Have a
So
great
with that,
week.
yeah, we're at a little after 8, so I'll let you guys do last thoughts and then we'll wrap it up.
Pretty much just in alignment with what I was saying earlier. I just add this, that, you know, like what Catherine was saying, that our thoughts create our reality. Well, you have to believe that. Or I should say, if you want the effects of that, if you want that power to have your thoughts create your reality, then belief is a huge part of that. And it's a good way to kind of test your belief, to start trying to be aware of your thoughts and how they are creating your reality. Because I think, at least for me, I become very aware of how easily my mind can go from being joyful to then focusing on all the different hassles that are going on in life. So that's my final thought. Believe and work on having that, being strong with your belief. That might help. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you all.
Guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the Saturday Morning
Book is
Mastermind, you
sacred.
can find us on Facebook at Mindset Mastery Collective. And you can also find the collective on YouTube. All our videos are listed there. And you can go back and watch any of the replays, or if you want to join us on the panel here and share your thoughts, we always welcome that. So you can also get a hold of us on Facebook, and we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for doing this, Dan.
You can